This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM channel 80, not to mention ESPN Radio simulcast live over the national television airwaves of ESPN News. Got a lot of stuff to get into. Just 24 hours away from the beginning of the NFL season. Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Atlanta Falcons. We'll be talking about that. I'm going to get into some of the teams that you need to watch out for. The player under the most pressure. The team under the most pressure. We'll be getting into all of that as the show progresses. Of course, Rick Pitino made a trip to ESPN today to promote his new book and basically to talk about his career being over. I've got some comments about that. The great Paul Finebaum, Mouth of the South for the SEC football conference. He's got his own Paul Finebaum show. He will be a guest in studio with yours truly. At the top of hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show. And of course, my buddy, the big boy himself, 2-time Super Bowl champion, the one and only Damien Woody. He'll be on with us in a little bit. He will be respectful. He will be respectful. Just because he's big, it don't mean he's better. He better watch his manners, watch his mouth, and not be blasphemous. Otherwise, I'm going to have to deal with him. All of that and more is coming up with today's show. But the first order of business is the fallout from Nike and Nike's willingness to basically commemorate the 30th anniversary of their Just Do It campaign by putting Colin Kaepernick as the face of it all. Serena Williams had something to say about that. LeBron James had something to say about that. Essentially, both proclaimed they stand with Nike, that they're going to be supportive of Nike in this endeavor. Nike obviously is not backing up one bit, according to reports last night. $3.75 billion market share drop for them once the news came out about Colin Kaepernick, and then ultimately it had risen again this morning. So it seems like it could end up being much ado about nothing. It's not that simplistic for me. It's not that simplistic for me. See, ladies and gentlemen, I don't like to come across as somebody that finds a reason to be annoyed, but I'll be the first to admit there's a few things that annoy me. So let me get this straight. We have an individual in Colin Kaepernick who elects to take a knee, who wants to bring attention to racial oppression, racial inequality, police brutality. Obviously, that's a problem that exists within the minority community. And now who are we talking about with the protests? We're talking about President Trump and his constituency. And we're talking about Phil Knight and Phil Knight being the CEO of Nike. Because that's what you're talking about now. You're basically talking about two conglomerates, two billionaire organizations that are front and center with this whole debate. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen, we ain't going to be talking about the issues that Colin Kaepernick wanted attention brought to. We ain't going to be talking about that. We'll be talking about President Trump versus Phil Knight. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about President Trump against the NFL, who's in business with Phil Knight and Nike. We'll be talking about that. We ain't going to be talking about the issues. Not going to be talking about it. Issue has been hijacked for months from the moment President Trump went to Alabama and said, I'd fire those SOBs. Fire them. And now you've got a situation where, listen, it's nice for LeBron James to speak up. It's nice for Serena Williams to speak up. I certainly would speak up on behalf of Colin Kaepernick's right to do what he elected to do. But make no mistake about it. He ain't even a subject anymore. He's a conduit to the bigger subject. And the bigger issue is going to be, you're going to side with Trump, you're going to side with Phil Knight. Either way, both of them going to get paid. Because you're going to have folks supposedly coming to Kaepernick's support, patronizing the Nike brand. Remember, you got a black population in the United States of America that makes up 14%. But our spending power exceeds $1.2 trillion, according to reports. You damn well know folks are going to buy footwear and another line of Nike apparel. So Phil Knight's going to get paid. And then you got President Trump, who ain't let go of his business entities, who hasn't eliminated himself from that equation. I don't give a damn what he says. And you got his constituency who are dogged in their support of him. And they're going to patronize him. Trump hotels ain't out of business. Trump golf courses ain't out of business. I assure you of that. He's doing just fine. And the people who support him are going to continue to support him. And so as a result, he'll benefit from it. Phil Knight will benefit from it. Colin Kaepernick still without a job. Filing collusion charges against the National Football League. Case will be allowed to continue because a judge says that. And as a result, he could end up getting a summary judgment where he'll get access to, potentially get access, that is, to owners, text messages and emails and all of this other stuff. And at the end, what does it come down to? He might end up getting some money. Maybe. And if the NFL owners were smart, they'd pay him off and tell him to go away. If they were smart. But then again, they might be smarter than we all suspect, because guess what? Talking about it, is it really compromising the National Football League? They were in panic mode. We've got to do something, according to Mr. Bob McNair, owner for the Houston Texans. We can't have this going on. We can't have the inmates running the prisons. That's what he said. So you got all of that going on. But the owners still increased in revenue 4.9%. They still pocketed a check for $255 million apiece. So I got the NFL getting paid. I got owners getting paid. I got Phil Knight getting paid. I got Donald Trump getting paid. Colin Kaepernick still without a job. Eric Reed still without a job. Brandon Marshall, remember him for the Denver Broncos? Remember when he was taking the knee and he was protesting? And then ultimately he stopped? Because some endorsement deals went out the window. Didn't hear anything about him getting them back. Hear nothing about that. We can slice this any way you want to. Is it just me, Nuno? Is it just me, John? Talking to my producers? Am I missing something? Mr. John Curtis? My technician extraordinaire? So you got a black dude who happened to be a quarterback. Now, please don't get me wrong. Don't think that I'm lost in the sauce by any means. Colin Kaepernick was 3-16 in his last 19 starts as a starter over the final 2 years of his career in the National Football League. He was 1-10 his last season. He never completed 60% of his passes in that span. His QBR was under 50. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to act like Colin Kaepernick was the second coming of Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Drew Brees here. Please don't get me wrong on that. I understand it. But it's amazing to me. Am I missing something, or am I connecting the dots to y'all's satisfaction? This dude takes his position in an effort to bring attention to what he wanted to bring attention to. And instead of talking about that, we're talking about patriotism. Instead of getting paid, he's without a job. And the people who are getting paid and who are getting attention and who are controlling the narrative, none of them look like him. And none of them are unemployed. And all of them are getting paid. Right down to the commissioner of the National Football League, who at least a couple of years ago reportedly made $44 million in 1 year. Y'all don't see something fishy about this? And see, this is where I don't blame. Let me be very clear. I ain't blaming the NFL. I'm not blaming Phil Knight. President Trump's a different matter. But I can't even blame him to some degree. Now, for those of you who might be appalled by what I just said, get the hell over it. I am sick and tired. People need to start using their intelligence and their common sense and take emotion out of the equation. And yes, I'm talking to black people too. Somebody got to say it. Damn it, I'm going to say it. Everybody in the uproar getting all emotional. These people are about business. Phil Knight know what he's doing. What, all of a sudden, Phil Knight had this stroke of conscience? Where, oh my Lord, I have to use this. I have to commemorate Colin Kaepernick. We have to do it. This stuff been going on for a year and a half. Where the hell was Nike? When did you speak up on behalf of Colin Kaepernick? He was on your payroll. You were paying him. You were taking care of him, but you didn't have any kind of advertisements associated with him. Why not? Because it wasn't good for business. That's why it wasn't good for business. So you had that going on. So we understand that. And now that we've gotten that out the way, let's think about this a little bit further. You got Nike. You got the NFL. I'm talking about being middle of the road. Talk about positioning themselves to be bulletproof. Talk about the hesitancy to take a stance. I mean, did you read the NFL statement? It was much ado about nothing. Much ado about nothing. The president, on the other hand, took a position, a very predictable position, because it works for him politically. Just like the NFL, whose ratings have gone way down, Nike is getting absolutely killed with anger and boycotts, according to the president. I wonder if they had any idea that it would be this way. As far as the NFL is concerned, I just find it hard to watch and always will until they stand for the flag, the president tweeted. I think it's a terrible message, meaning commemorating your 30th anniversary of the Just Do It campaign with Colin Kaepernick. He said, I think it's a terrible message. That and a message that shouldn't be sent. There's no reason for it. In another way, it is what this country is all about, that you have certain freedoms to do things that other people think you shouldn't do. But I personally am on a different side of it. This is according to the president. The NFL essentially has been neutral in all of this because they just want to get back to football. But you notice that everybody's getting paid but Colin Kaepernick. Everybody's profiting off of this but Colin Kaepernick. Unless martyrdom is a profit. I hope that's good enough for some of y'all. Somehow it don't work for me. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call. That's 888-729-3776. That's one item on my docket. I'm definitely going to continue to talk about that. That subject's not going anywhere. Yankees, I appreciate y'all winning last night. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you beating the A's as well. You need to show that you beat teams like that. I still think the Yankees are going home after one wild card playoff game. That's just me, though. I hope I'm wrong, of course. But getting back to some football items, Le'Veon Bell still has not shown up to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not reporting. And it's pretty sad that it's come down to this. I don't want to hear a damn thing about some dude named James Conner. I'm sure he could play, but I don't want to hear about James Conner. I just don't want to hear about it. You got Le'Veon Bell ready to go. You know what? I need him in there. But I'm not so sure he's doing the wrong thing by not being in there because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He's got to make sure his priority has to be being healthy for the 2019 free agency period. Now, there are those of you out there that's going to be incredibly appalled by Le'Veon Bell electing to go in this direction. You better get over it. There's the National Football League. One play, one practice can end your career. And Le'Veon Bell's trying to make sure and ensure that he gets paid no matter what. I can't fault him for that. Now, the Steelers offered him $70 million. But the guarantees were considerably lower from what I'm told than what Todd Gurley was offered. So when you look at it from that perspective, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you got to figure out something. You got to figure out something. See, to me, the subject that needs to be broached is about how there's a level of urgency that should be that should be applied to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Time is running out. Time is running out. You got Big Ben, he ain't getting any younger. You got Antonio Brown, who ain't getting any younger. You got Juju Smith-Schuster, who can ball. Jesse James is your tight end, can ball. Your offensive line is considerably intact. Le'Veon Bell had 406 touches last year, 321 carries, 85 receptions. This dude is all-purpose, all-world, and you need him desperately. If you're going to win the Super Bowl, if you're going to have a chance to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have a chance to knock off the New England Patriots, you got to get it. You got to get it on. You got to handle your business. And I think it's one of those situations right now where the Steelers have got to suck it up and try to take care of this guy. Now, obviously, they probably can't because you passed the deadline. to sign them to a contract after you franchise them, and I understand all of that. But they should have done something, and they didn't. And now I think they put their Super Bowl hopes in jeopardy. Pittsburgh Steelers are not better than the New England Patriots. Do I think they're better than Kansas City? Yes, because Kansas City's deep offense is great, but their defense stinks. And I believe it will. Jacksonville is no joke defensively. Offensively, Leonard Fournette and my boy's going to run you into the ground. I'm not a believer in Blake Bortles. I don't want to hear about the Colts. Let's see if Andrew Luck is fully back. Houston Texans, J.J. Watt's back with Jadeveon Clowney. Let's see what they do defensively. And let's see if Deshaun Watson is no fluke. I don't believe he is, but let's see. Baltimore Ravens might be formidable. Flacco might be hell-bent on proving something this year. I'm not worried about anybody in the AFC East. The Bills, Peterman starting. There's nothing else to talk about. That shows me the state of affairs going on in Buffalo right there. Miami, Ryan Tannehill is your franchise player. That's all I need to know. And in the case of the New York Jets, you're playing with house money. Sam Darnold's a rookie, 3rd overall pick. There's but so much that's expected out of him right now. We all know this. So guess what? I'm going to look at him, and I'm not going to expect much from him. If the Jets win 7 games, I'll be proud of them. And outside of that, the only story that's really interesting me is Baker Mayfield. And now he's going to be the backup to Tyrod Taylor, as was announced on Hard Knocks by Hugh Jackson last night. So we shall see. But it really should be a 2 to 3 team horse race in the AFC between New England, Jacksonville, and Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, to me, has blown that opportunity by not taking care of Le'Veon Bell. Giants didn't make that mistake. They took care of Odell Beckham Jr. And by taking care of Odell Beckham Jr., they put themselves in a position where right now, guess what? He seems to be growing up. He seems to be growing up. And I got to tell you something right now. He's already because you know Jalen Ramsey for the Jaguars has been running his mouth. He hasn't disrespected Odell Beckham Jr. in any way. But he's been running his mouth. Looking forward to it. You know he questioned Eli Manning. So as a result, we're going to see Odell Beckham Jr. going at it with Jalen Ramsey. I got to tell y'all right now, opening day, I don't know who y'all are giving the edge to. I'm giving it to Jalen Ramsey. You know why? Because Odell Beckham Jr. is coming off that ankle injury. Odell Beckham Jr. is the one that has to show that he's got his bearings back under him. And he's still that stud we know him to be. That's what Odell Beckham has to do. And it might take you a few weeks to get reacclimated to being on a football field on a Sunday afternoon. Jalen Ramsey don't have that to be concerned about. Jalen Ramsey's ready now. So I just look at it from that perspective and I say, excuse me, I expect Jalen Ramsey to have the edge here. But a lot is going to tell me about Eli Manning too. Because you got a lot of people who believe that Eli Manning is under more pressure than anybody else. That's not how I feel, but that's how a lot of people feel. They really do. I'm not of that mindset. Everybody looks at Eli Manning, the guy that's led the league in interceptions 3 times. The guy that was 3-12 last year as a starter. That threw 19 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. That's how they look at Eli Manning. I look at him totally differently. I think that Eli is basically playing with house money. It's Odell and Saquon Barkley and that offensive line that's got to show up. Eli Manning is a 37-year-old stationary target. That's what he is. He's a 37-year-old stationary target. And there's only but so much he can do if you don't provide him with the help. So to me, the pressure is on the Giants to help him, especially that defense, more so than the pressure is on Eli Manning to produce. In the case of Big Ben Roethlisberger, that is where I will apply the pressure. You got Antonio Brown, man. You got Juju Smith-Schuster. You got Jesse James. The likelihood is that at some point, earlier than later, we'll expect you to have Le'Veon Bell. What is the problem? That's how we're going to be looking at this dude. We're going to be looking at Big Ben Roethlisberger and saying, what's up? Are you going to handle your business? Or are you going to talk about, hey, I'm really not that excited to be playing. Maybe I don't have it anymore. Nobody want to hear that. So all of that and more are things that we have to talk about right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage of America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. By the way, get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. Damien Woody's up next. Paul Finebaum is coming on with us at the top of hour number 2 to discuss some elements going on in college football and beyond. So we're looking forward to doing all of that, plus getting back to your phone calls at 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Back with Damien Woody in a minute.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people!
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm as happy as a clam.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will be, quote, as happy as a clam, unquote. The Geico legal team cannot accurately verify clams even experience the complex human emotional state known as happiness. As an invertebrate mollusk living half submerged on the ocean floor, with no arms, legs, or wireless access, what's there to be happy about? A clam's all like, oh, I'm so happy I didn't get turned into New England clam chowder today. Pronounced regionally as chowder. Chowder. Oh, that's so fun to say. What were we talking about again?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
30 minutes past hour number 1 back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Also on ESPN Radio for Sirius XM Channel 80. Also simulcast live over the national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. By the way, baseball season rolls along. Tune in tonight for a National League Central battle as the Brewers take on the Chicago Cubs. Presented by Vivid Seats. Coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. Also, gentlemen, you've been sitting around for too long. Whether you want to get to a game, NFL, college football, MLB, or a concert, look no further than Vivid Seats, the official ticket partner of ESPN. Go to vividseats.com and enter promo code ESPN to get 10% off your order. Always a pleasure to have my buddy on the line. We chop it up on first take, go at each other because I usually have a problem with his wardrobe when he refuses to wear a tie. I think he's so disrespectful when he shows up on my show not wearing a tie. But that's just me messing with him. My buddy, the one and only Damien Woody on the line with us right now. What's going on, big boy? How are you, man?
I'm good, my brother. How you doing?
You know, I'm kind of annoyed right now, Damien, because I just finished reading this story, and I don't know if you've heard it. You know, the Steelers, when Le'Veon Bell wouldn't report on Monday, you know, they expressed disappointment. Then on Tuesday, you know, the players had their reaction. It was a bit mixed and whatever. And now here we go on Wednesday. Big Ben Roethlisberger chimes in, taking the company's stance of focusing on a regular season opener against the Browns. But, you know, basically, we all know that Le'Veon Bell didn't sign his $14.5 million franchise tag. Big Ben conceding he's one of the best in the league. Still pointed out that the offense remains in good hands if Bell isn't on the field. Quote, I think we're a very good offense. Football is the ultimate team sport. One person doesn't make or break you. What are your thoughts about Le'Veon Bell, the situation with Pittsburgh, and also what you just heard Big Ben say about it?
Well, first of all, as far as Big Ben is concerned, one person doesn't make or break you. You take Tom Brady away from New England and see where that goes. You take Aaron Rodgers away from Green Bay, see where that goes. So that's just pure nonsense what Big Ben is talking about. That's just company speak. But just moving on to Le'Veon Bell, listen, I understand Pittsburgh didn't do him right by paying that man, because that man has been one of the most dynamic playmakers in the National Football League. But Stephen A., with that being said, there's nothing he can do about his contract situation right now other than to sign the franchise tender and report. So, if I'm in the locker room, I need all my guys on hand, okay? Because it's week 1. We're preparing for a divisional opponent in the Cleveland Browns, okay? I need my guy there. So I don't know if I'm doing all the company stuff. I'm more of, man, you need to report, man, so we can go out here and win the
listen,
game.
you don't want to get in the way of his money, or in the same breath, you don't want him to jeopardize his health without getting his money. My problem with Big Ben, all you had to say was, man, we need this guy. I really, really hope. I know that the situation didn't work out well for him. I'm not happy about that for him because he's one of the best in the league. But I know this much. Our chances of winning significantly increase when we have him available. I hope he comes back. I don't understand why Ben would say what he just said. I really don't get it, Damien.
Listen, Stephen A., are you surprised, though? Are you really surprised about that? Because we've heard Big Ben say things throughout the years, man, it just makes you just scratch your head. 1 minute he talked about he's going to retire. Next minute, well, I want to play for years to come, and just having a diva-type attitude. And it's just like, bro, just play ball. You don't have to worry about talking just because you're the quarterback. You just concentrate on playing football.
Wow. Damien Woody right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. So with that being said, without Le'Veon Bell, where do you have the Steelers in the upper echelon of the AFC conference?
Man, wow. If there's no Le'Veon Bell with the Pittsburgh Steelers, here's what I'm going to say. Because the AFC is nowhere near as strong as the NFC, I think they'll still have a fighting chance. But you also got to remember, the Jacksonville Jaguars kicked their teeth in even with Le'Veon Bell last year. So you got to think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be at the top of the mix in the AFC. You got your New England, the Houston Texans with Deshaun Watson. If those guys, all those boys stay healthy, they're going to be in the mix. I'm high on the Los Angeles Chargers. I think the Chargers get off to a fast start. They're going to be able to contend. So if the Steelers don't have Le'Veon Bell, that changes the dynamic of their offense tremendously.
And I'm looking at this now, and then I look at the rest of the AFC. I'm trying to give some love to the Kansas City Chiefs because I know their offense is so high-powered, but I just don't believe in them defensively. I'm trying to give some love to the Denver Broncos, but I'm not this believer in Case Keenum. I'm trying to give some love to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I'm no believer in Blake Bortles. I mean, is there a sleeper amongst the AFC teams that you think no one is talking enough about that we all need to watch out for?
A sleeper team. No, I don't. I think the Los Angeles Chargers, Stephen A. Los Angeles Chargers, I'm telling you, man, it's going to be a team that's going to be reckoned with this year. Their defense is excellent. They got two big-time pass rushers. Their secondary is top-notch. Phillip Rivers, as we all know, is a baller. They got Melvin Gordon in the backfield. They got weapons on the outside. So the Los Angeles Chargers, if I'm pushing my chips in, this might be the year I might push my chips in on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Phillip Rivers, we talk about the greatness of other quarterbacks or whatever. On one hand, I want to acknowledge that Phillip Rivers is big time. We know what he can do with flinging that football, but they have missed the playoffs 7 of the last 8 years. What am I to make of the kind of career that he's had, Damien?
I think Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer, and I know people will ride the fence about whether he has the credentials or not, and a lot of that has to do with not having a Super Bowl. But Phillip Rivers, to me, has been one of the top quarterbacks in this league for a long time with the San Diego / Los Angeles Chargers. I love the way he plays the game. He has a chip on his shoulder. He has an attitude which I love. And to me, he's a Hall of Famer in my book.
Let me transition to the Jets for a quick second here because Sam Darnold obviously is going to be the starting quarterback. You agree with this decision to start Sam Darnold now, or do you think that the Jets should have waited a few weeks before they got all their ducks in a row and just left Josh McCown in there? After all, there's no game changer at the running back position. There's no definitive number one receiver. Austin Nefarian-Jenkins is going to Jacksonville. I would think they might need to wait a little while before putting Sam Darnold in as the starter as a 21-year-old rookie, but to that you say what?
I always say, Stephen, if they're close, you get the benefit of the doubt to the rookie. The one thing that I know, and just watching Sam Darnold and just talking to people, the man has absorbed the playbook and applied it on the field. I get it. He's the youngest quarterback since the merger and all of that. But to me, there's no better way of learning than by being on the field when the bullets are flying. All this nonsense that you talk about when you sit back and learn or whatever, I think that's nonsense. Everybody points to Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is just an anomaly to me. Most guys learn through the fire, and that's the only way, to me, that Sam Darnold is going to be. He's going to show. Plus, on top of that, Stephen A., these rookie deals, you literally got to take advantage of these rookie deals. You got to take advantage. You can't have these guys sitting on the bench and waste a year away while you still got your quarterback cheap.
By the way, before I let you get on out of here, in the NFC, transitioning to the NFC, everybody's talking about the Los Angeles Rams. Their secondary has improved with Peters and Aqib Talib. And Ndamukong Suh is now on that line with Aaron Donald. You still got Gurley and Goff. Everybody's looking at them as the team to beat, but I think the NFC is a monster conference. Minnesota is no joke. Kirk Cousins got something to prove. Philadelphia's got a Super Bowl title to defend. Aaron Rodgers is returning in Green Bay. Jimmy Garoppolo is supposed to be some savior in the Bay Area. What do you see when you see the Rams and you see the NFC?
I see the Rams. Rams on paper, they look stacked. I mean, they got Pro Bowlers and all pro guys all over the board. There's no question about that. But my pick in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl this year is the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints lost on a fluke play to the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC divisional game. I think New Orleans, with the draft class they had last year that they hit a home run on, they got playmakers all over the field, both offense and defense, and Drew Brees. Now, you want to talk about a bad man? That boy Drew Brees is a bad man. Bad man.
They say that about him. You feel that way about him, whether he's on the road or just in the Superdome?
They had the team. They have the all-purpose, all-weather team now.
Got it. Damien Woody, appreciate you as always, man. Looking forward to talking to you after opening night tomorrow night in the NFL with Philadelphia and Atlanta. Thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Thanks again to Damien Woody for coming on the show and rapping to us a little bit about this upcoming NFL season. Philadelphia Eagles, Atlanta Falcons show up tomorrow night to open the 2018 NFL season. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Your phone calls in more than a minute before the great Paul Finebaum comes up with us to start off hour number 2. You are listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! To the phones we go. Jeff in Brooklyn, talk to me. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Stephen A. Smith.
Speak up, brother. You over the national airwaves. You stop trying to sound like you smooth and stuff. Speak up.
Nah, I'm not trying to sound smooth. I'm just happy to be on the line. I just wanted to say I'm a little disappointed in you, man. I'm not even gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I was listening to some of your stuff that you were saying on the air,
yep,
on television,
mm-hmm,
and I have to admit, I thought you would have been a little more empathizing towards the Colin Kaepernick situation.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a question.
You need to hurry up though, because we only got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Absolutely, the people that you saw burning sneakers. How do you feel about them? I
think they're disgusting.
Okay, so granted, when you had the opportunity on the air to talk about Colin Kaepernick in the brightest light, why wouldn't you?
First of all, stop right there. Stop right there. Number one, I'm no cheerleader. You can choose to do that, Jeff. That's not my job. Number two, I have an obligation to report the facts, which I did. Number three, I'm talking about Kaepernick. I'm on national television and national radio every day. My position on Colin Kaepernick has been explained ad nauseum. I've come to his defense on many occasions in terms of his right to do what he did, etc., and how he's being blackballed. But number four, I'm also acknowledging what the realities of the situation is. There's a price that you're going to pay for some of these things, and I think there has to be an end game. And if you didn't have a plan and you weren't organized, you find yourself in the kind of hole that you find yourself in. Number five, I talked about how Nike stepped up and they did what they did, but they're going to profit off of this. They didn't do this out of the kindness of their heart. They know what they're doing. President Trump knows what he's doing. He's going to end up profiting off of this as well. Nike's going to get paid. Trump's going to get paid. The NFL is going to find a way to get paid. Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job. What possible problem could you have with anything that I've explained on that level?
Understandable. Can I respond to that?
Hurry up.
You had the opportunity to shed light on what Colin has done
Hold on, stop right there. I've done that many times. But that doesn't negate the fact that things have changed. As time has evolved, regardless of what he could have done, regardless of what his intent is, we are in what we're in. I've spoken about Colin Kaepernick for almost 2 years. I do a show every day. What do you want me to do? Put on pom-poms and wave it? The fact is, he got beat out by Blaine Gabbert. He's 3-16 as a starter. He's completed less than 60% of his passes. He's had a QBR under 50. He's never been confused of being the second coming of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, or even Big Ben Roethlisberger. In the throes of talking about everything that involves Colin Kaepernick, Jeff, I can't ignore that. That's a reality.
You're reminding people about Blaine Gabbert, but you haven't yet to say how Colin Kaepernick has donated his own money.
I did say that. Matter of fact, I said that yesterday. Now you've ticked me off because you're misrepresenting my position. That's exactly what I pointed out yesterday. I exactly pointed that out yesterday. But the point is, that doesn't negate the situation and what he's facing. And what he's facing, they are hell-bent on keeping him out of the league. And so for all of this stuff that's been going on, as right as he is, the narrative has been hijacked and everybody seems to be profiting off of it, but him, players, and the black community. That's the bottom line. And there's no way around that. Hour number 2 with Paul Finebaum up next. I don't wear pom-poms, people.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, plus ESPN Radio, simulcast live over the airwaves, the television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. By the way, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, I've interviewed this man on many occasions, but it's always been on the phone. I've had the honor and privilege of having dinner with him once upon a time a few months ago in North Carolina. For the first time ever, we're sitting in studio with one another. You call him the mouth of the South. I call him one of the foremost authorities, not just on the sport of college football, but all of football. I'm talking about the great one himself, the one and only Paul Finebaum. He's sitting right next to me. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
It is so great to be with you in New York, of all places.
That's right. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on First Take with me this morning. Always appreciate that, and we're looking forward to having you on every single week. But we got some college football stuff to get into. Let's go to the obvious first. Sure. Let's go the obvious route. Nick Saban and Alabama. Roll Tide, baby. I don't even care about what happened against Louisville because I expected them to run over Louisville, to be quite honest with you. But I want to get your reaction first to how did they look on the field to you? I know you got to take the opponent into consideration, but are you seeing a team that's destined for yet another national championship?
I am, but I don't want to sound like a coach, Stephen A., because I hate coach speak, but they can be better. Mm-hmm. They made a lot of mistakes, and I think that's one reason why Saban was in the Saban mode after the game. Mm-hmm. So, they were playing a good opponent, not a great opponent, mm-hmm. and they sometimes play to that level. But I think the most important thing that I took away from this game, defense has some work to do, not what they were last year. A lot of NFL players coming out of that. But the offense is explosive, receivers across the board, mm-hmm. wide running backs, and a quarterback. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about.
Here's the thing. What the hell was Louisville thinking about? Coming into the game, I think you had a receiver talking about we could take advantage of their secondary. You had the coach sitting there. We could beat this team. Yeah. What were they thinking about talking about Alabama that way before the game?
They knew they were going down. I talked to Petrino the other day, and he, typical Bobby Petrino fashion, he acted like he didn't. Nobody said any of those things, but that's how Bobby Petrino, as the rep that he does.
There you go.
But yeah, that was the odds makers knew what they were doing. It was a 3 to 4 touchdown game, and it was one of the most uninteresting Alabama openers we've seen in many years. They played USC a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they destroyed USC a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Last year FSU. This was just okay. Get it over with. Who's next?
Mm-hmm. Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Is it really about the SEC, or should we pay attention to the ACC with Clemson? We know how formidable they could be. I'm looking at the Pac-12. They had a slew of losses this past weekend. I expected more from them. What really stood out to you this past weekend on college football? Whether it was a high or a low, what resonated with you most?
One thing, we hear the hype about the Big Ten East and how powerful it is, but you had two teams, Michigan State and Penn State, that were lucky to win games. Michigan State on Friday night, a squeaker. Penn State had to score and then win in overtime against Appalachian State. So that concerns me a little bit. Michigan's obvious. They were playing a good team at a very difficult place to play in Notre Dame. So I'm still a little bit for pausing there. The ACC looked pretty bad. I mean, take Clemson out of it. Florida State was a total joke.
That's right.
I mean, that there's no getting around. Louisville last year, for the last couple of years, Lamar Jackson, they showed nothing. You had other schools that probably don't matter as much. North Carolina going to Cal looked like garbage. So I mean, I think it's a one-team league in the ACC. The Pac-12, I'm not ready to write them off. I thought Washington actually played pretty well. Played a really good Auburn team, and this week you got Stanford and SC. So SC went through the motions. Stanford played better than I thought they would. So the winner of that game
Love didn't look that great. Literally looked that great. 29 yards.
No.
29 yards rushing. I didn't have him as my Heisman Trophy guy. I had this kid out of Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor, that that's who I was picking as the favorite until I watched this quarterback in Oklahoma. And I said, oh my Lord. I mean, this might be a little bit different. What are your thoughts after week one?
Yeah, I really liked Oklahoma. And remember, Kyler Murray bailed out of A&M. Baker Mayfield bailed out of Tech. I mean, that's an interesting dichotomy there of players leaving that state to go to Oklahoma. I thought he was sensational. And yeah, listen, I mean, Baker Mayfield won the Heisman last year. He was the number one draft choice. That's a tough spot to move into. Kyler Murray could have played baseball. He stuck around. Yeah. They're a better team than I thought. But one thing, Stephen A., week 1 to week 2. I mean, it's natural. You'll do it starting tomorrow night in the NFL. Yeah, right. It is a reaction and an overreaction game. And it's a cliche. I talked to a coach the other day, but I said, is this really true? He said, yes, it is. Week 1 to week 2 is the biggest improvement in college football. You know what? We're talking to Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. I'm going to go to Michigan State just for a quick second on this score. I remember, D'Antonio, we were looking at this team a few years ago. They competed for a national championship. They were in the final. And now it's like they're okay. But there's really nothing that resonates with you. What's going on with them? Why do they seem to have dipped a little bit, if not a lot? Well, in that year, they had a really good quarterback. Right. I think Connor Cook. Yeah. I mean, I think in the end, it's you lose a few players, and listen, that's a tough league, but there's still no excuse for the way they play. But opening games, when you play an App State, I was on the sideline 2 years ago at Tennessee when they were still ascending. They went into overtime to beat App State. I don't know why teams, they just don't get excited. That's why certain coaches like these big early games. Saban's a proponent of the opening game because the players start pointing toward it as opposed to some garbage game that you cannot convince an 18 to 22-year-old matters. I'm wondering, I'm going to transition from Michigan State to Michigan. I got to tell you, Jim Harbaugh's got to be in trouble. They're like 9-10 in their last 19 games with this man. And I'm like, listen, 10-3 seasons, and then last year it was 8-5. But they played 500 ball the last half of the season. He's 9-9 in his last 18 games going into this past weekend, and then he loses to Notre Dame. You can look at talent or lack thereof. I'm looking at recruiting. I'm looking at coaching. Something is not right at Michigan, and I don't know if Harbaugh will survive if they continue to play this way. To that you say what? Yeah, I agree. I mean, sometimes these things just play out. Listen, we've talked a lot about what he's done in the spring. Yeah, I mean, he has mastered that, but at some point, does it really matter that you go to the IMG Academy? Does it really matter that, well, I think it does in a way. If you have an audience with the Pope, I'd love one. That's right. I bet you would. That's right. Well, you may have had one. I doubt that. No. I didn't pull that off yet. Not yet. The church could use you right now. But and then this year, but those wear out. They're great experiences, but they don't really translate. I mean, are you going to sign up for the University of Michigan because the team's making a spring trip to Normandy? No. They're not a hot program. What are the hot programs? Ohio State's been one for a long time, with or without the Urban Meyer controversy.
And they keep beating Harbaugh in Michigan.
Exactly. Oklahoma, Alabama, Clemson. Now you have Georgia. Now you have Jimbo Fisher. I mean, I don't think young players are saying, man, I got to go play for Jim Harbaugh. There's just not that buzz. And yeah, I mean, you can talk about his record with the 49ers, but that doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, he went to the Super Bowl, but you can't sell that. You sell rings. You don't sell appearances.
Well, see, you're talking about it's not that buzz when it comes to Michigan. I'm a native New Yorker. Damn it, it ain't that buzz in the region. I mean, the only team that's worth ever talking about, and that's periodically and minimally, is Boston College. I mean, from that, you can go all the way throughout the East Coast until you get down south. There's no football that's worth talking about. Why is that? As somebody that's renowned for covering college football, why has it, I don't know whether it's Rutgers, and obviously that's the only thing that we could think of right now, because it's not like Villanova or anybody or St. John's or anybody else has something like that. They don't even have a program in St. John's. But I'm just saying, when you look at the East Coast, how come college football has never resonated?
Well, I think for the biggest reasons, there's so many other things going on. Listen, I spent a lot of my time, I grew up in Tennessee. I spent most of my life in Alabama. There's nothing else. You don't have pennant races.
Right.
You don't have the NFL.
Right.
You don't have the NBA to think about. You have college football, and it's a year. I mean, I don't want to say this too loudly, but I've made a pretty fair living. I'm not Stephen A. Smith.
Stop it.
But college football, we talk about it all the time. It's passionate. And I think it's a better game than the NFL. The NFL has so many issues that you've already talked about that college football doesn't. But my family's all from New York. They didn't grow up talking about college football. My father was a Yankees fan. He followed the New York Giants. When they moved to Tennessee, and I had me, I didn't know much about it either, because that wasn't natural. And I think if you're, if you look, what are the biggest college football markets in the country? Birmingham's number one. Columbus, Ohio is number two. I mean, and you're talking about the Alabama-Auburn game, Stephen, a couple of years ago, did something like a 68 share in Birmingham.
Wow.
My question was, what are the other people watching?
What were they thinking about? What were they doing?
What are 32% of the public? But my point is, in New York, there's no reason to pay attention to college football. The media doesn't. I mean, you pick up the New York papers. Back when papers were picked up, you had maybe the small article, the talk shows. This show in New York. I mean, I realize we're talking about right now, but day in, day out, it's what's going on with the Yankees. Can the Jets and Darnold get? I mean, so that's the difference between what's going on up in New York versus Atlanta, Birmingham, Memphis, Nashville, places like that.
Let's switch subjects, Paul Finebaum, to this notion. My man Herm Edwards, my former colleague, is now the coach at Arizona State. Kevin Sumlin's at Arizona. Watched him lose his game this past weekend. I think it was the BYU. It was the BYU. Okay. I watched that. I watched the fourth quarter of that over the weekend. Then we're looking at Jimbo Fisher. He's now at Texas A&M. We see it wasn't a good look for Taggart to look the way they looked at Florida State. It just wasn't a good look. You saw a considerable drop off from what you once saw for Jimbo Fisher at Florida State and what we saw this past weekend with Florida State. When you think about the coaching changes that have taken place in college football this year, what are you most excited about?
Well, I think the Jimbo Fisher move was probably the most impactful because, forget the money. And by the way, I was out in College Station Thursday night. Somebody out there told me, said, Jimbo got 75. If he had held out for 100, he'd have gotten that. Oil prices are up. They don't care out there.
Okay.
It's just win.
That's right.
You have to have everybody all in. Florida State, I won't write them off. I mean, Jimbo just checked out last year. That program has slipped a little bit in recruiting. Miami's hurt them a little bit. You have Georgia. You have the University of Florida now. Mullen, I think, is also going to be impactful. Probably my favorite coaching hire of all was Scott Frost. I have been around him a couple of times, Stephen A., and he's as close to the perfect coach as I have run into in a long time. That's a tough place to change the dynamics. This isn't Tom Osborne. This isn't 1991.
You talk about Nebraska. You talking about this? And what are you expecting from him?
But I think he will improve the product a lot. And you don't need to be that good on that side of the Big Ten. Look at Wisconsin. You can be good, but you don't have to be as good as Ohio State.
How good is Wisconsin going to be this year? I've got them. I'm giving them a chance. Why? Because they play a power game, and you got Jonathan Taylor running the football, and you got that offensive line that he's running behind. I think they can make games ugly. I think they'll play in inclement weather. They won't get teams that are capable of being at their best because of that inclement weather, and I think ultimately it could help them. Am I off my rock about saying that?
No, and I think they go to Penn State, and as I say that, I wouldn't write Penn State off yet either. I mean, there's a lot of overreaction to that game, but I do think James Franklin is a superb football coach. So I don't buy them as much as you do, although you made a compelling argument there. I didn't buy them last year, even limping into, I say limping because they didn't play anybody.
Right.
And, they'll play a little better schedule because they go to Penn State, but I would not put them in my Final Four.
Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and simulcast on ESPN News as well. Before I let you get on out of here, I got a few things because I want to transition to the NFL because, damn it, these players is going to be in the NFL. You covered them when they were in college. You know about them just as well as anybody else, if not better. Saquon Barkley for the New York Giants. What's he going to do for them?
I love him. I mean, he's as good as I've seen in college in a long time, and yeah, again, the Giants have a lot to overcome, but I think he'll be very impactful.
You think he will?
I will.
Okay. Baker Mayfield.
I'm not buying.
Explain. We need this explanation because Cleveland, and listen, he's going to be a reserve. He's coming off the bench. He's going to back up Tyrod Taylor. I think it's a smart move by Cleveland to make that move. However, Baker Mayfield supposedly has the it factor and all of this other stuff. Your thoughts?
I'm in the minority here, but I just something about psychological makeup. I've seen him do too many stupid things, and you try that in the NFL, and you're going to get blown away.
Really? I mean, some people say he was young, and as a result of being young, you make mistakes, but now that you're going to be in the NFL, you're going to be the face of the franchise. Don't confuse this guy with Johnny Manziel. That's what they say.
It's fair. I confuse him with Johnny Manziel.
You ain't letting that go, huh? You're not letting that go, huh? Listen, he was a walk-on, showed up, produced 70% of his passes. I'm looking at him from that perspective. Okay, Bradley Chubb in Denver.
He's good. I think he's going to be impactful. I mean, I hate to say this. I'm not saying the same thing about everyone you asked me about, but in watching him in college, I mean, I think he's a can't miss.
How much does playing with Von Miller help him on that defense? I mean, it's a rhetorical question almost, but I'm still asking.
It is a rhetorical question. The answer is obvious.
That's right.
But I like the question.
Sam Darnold, starting quarterback for the New York Jets, not waiting. I'm thinking about, look, I watched the man turn the football over at USC in his last year there. I know he can play, but I'm like, did you have to put him in a starting lineup right now? Couldn't you have waited a few weeks with Josh McCown there? What are your thoughts?
I thought he was the most disappointing player in college football last year. And I kept defending the guy. And he kept screwing up. And as a result, I'm going to take a powder on him.
What was the reason he was screwing up so much in your estimation?
I think it was mental. I think he came into the season with the expectations. He dealt with them poorly, which is okay. He's in college. But he's in New York City. What did Tony Romo say the other day? He's going to be one of the greatest.
Yes.
I mean,
well, that's Tony Romo. I mean, what do you want? I guess what I'm looking at it is this. I think about him. I think about the New York market and what have you. A market like this, if Paul Finebaum had the top pick and it was for the New York market or the LA market, considering the number of college players that came out, who would have been your choice to handle it all?
I would have taken Josh Rosen. I just thought his makeup was a little bit better for New York. Well, he's kind of brash. I think he could have handled it. I mean, I got a couple of friends that have played up here. I travel with one every week, Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never lived in New York, but I keep up with this market. I mean, you're on a kamikaze mission if you don't handle everything well. And I think Rosen just had that internal makeup where he would have shut all that out.
What about arm strength? What about physicality, durability? They were saying that Darnold had the edge over him in those categories. To that you say what?
Well, I think he probably did. Listen, hey, by the way, these same geniuses who say that took a powder on Dak Prescott. We don't have enough time for me to go off on NFL scouts. I mean, they know everything. And how often do they get the right quarterback?
There you go. Josh Allen.
I like him.
What about him?
I mean, I'm a little
in Buffalo. They haven't been pleased with what they've seen in the preseason.
I'm surprised, but I think it's just as well for him. Take it slow. Stephen, you've watched plenty of NFL. I just do not like to see a quarterback go down the disposal before the third, fourth game of the season, and he is a wreck.
Do you think Josh Rosen is in a good situation in Arizona?
I do. I haven't seen a lot of their games, but I think you've got a lot of pieces out there, and I like the coach, and I think he'll be fine there. I just liked him here.
Mm-hmm. Saquon was worth the number 2 overall pick?
I do. It's a risk, and not to use the Ezekiel Elliott component, but I think that worked out really well.
Sony Michel in New England, they ultimately gobbled him up from Georgia. How do you think he's going to do?
Man, again, you see these guys in college, so naturally you're quadruple hype for them. Mm-hmm. I think he fits well into that program.
Before I let you get on out of here, on another note, Nick Saban made news for the wrong reasons, going after ESPN reporter Maria Taylor on the field in the aftermath of the game. Ultimately, he apologized and what have you. Express to my audience what your reaction was when you saw Nick Saban act that way.
I wasn't surprised. It was very typical of Nick Saban, who believes that he can bully the media at all costs and without criticism. And when he received a lot of criticism, he probably wasn't sure how to react, so he came up with one of the, you hear the cliche, well, at least he apologized, enough already. Well, if you're going to apologize like a human being. Mm-hmm. Don't get her name wrong, which he did. Mm-hmm. Listen, he knows Maria Taylor. Maria and Marie are 2 different names, Stephen A. If I'm apologizing to you, I am going to get your name right. And I'm also going to do one thing. I'm going to say to you, I apologize, Stephen A. I was wrong. What did Nick Saban say? We apologize. Mm-hmm. That is BS. Mm-hmm. That's Nick Saban essentially saying, I don't really want to apologize, but they told me to, and my wife told me to, and here it is. But I don't believe in it.
Speaking of people who really didn't want to apologize but ended up doing so, what did you think about Urban Meyer when he came out with a second statement after he had to accept the suspension?
Which apology are we talking about?
Exactly. The first one of the press conference, the second one he just came out with a few days ago. Which one?
The worst one was the one he issued the statement quibbling over Twitter. I thought the first time he stood, the press conference was abominable.
Yes.
I've never seen anyone look quite that bad.
That's the first time I actually thought he should have been gone because of this.
Yeah, no, I did not agree. But as you made your argument that day on First Take, I'm saying, you know what? Because they didn't release the 23-page document until after the press conference, so it was a little bit hard to juxtapose one versus the other. But yeah, I think he has taken a massive credibility hit. I'm really interested in when he does his first interview, what does he say? And he will. But I think that school right now is disturbed by his behavior, and I frankly think this will be his last year at Ohio State.
Really? You think this will be his last year? Why? Because they're going to let him go, or because he's going to walk away?
I think it's going to be a combination of both. Where I think. Again, you win the national championship, that changes some things because that's sports. That's life.
Right.
But I think the body language between the president, the body language between Gene Smith, who really took a lot of bullets.
Yes.
For Urban.
He threw him under the bus?
Yeah. I mean, Urban
Meyer threw him under the bus?
But Gene showed up at that press conference, took the punches. He intercepted a couple of questions to protect Urban. That's a real person there.
Yes.
That's a class guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think Urban is like Saban. They're not used to being criticized, but Urban has just been lambasted for almost 5 weeks now, and I think you're going to see him just his attitude. And by the way, he's a quitter. He quit at Florida. He tucked and ran. He quit once. He came back, and then he quit again. He gave the bogus line about, I want to spend more time with my family. 2 weeks later, he signs a deal with ESPN. Yep. He's traveling all over the country.
Makes you root for Dabo Swinney that much more. I can tell you that much, because Clemson's a big-time program, and Dabo Swinney doesn't get much classier than him. That's the way I look at it.
Totally.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
My pleasure.
The great Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Back to your phone calls and more in a minute, plus more about Donald Trump, Nike, Colin Kaepernick, LeBron, Serena. The list goes on and on. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
Ow, ow. Yep, you guessed it. I'm a speed bump, so I've got one job. I slow you down. So imagine how I feel about Geico, who does way more. Like, not only could they save you money on car insurance, but they've been around for over 75 years, giving people fast and friendly claim service. Ow. Plus, they got a nifty mobile app that gives you 24/7 access. Ow. Just doing my job, buddy.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Rory, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Yes, how you doing, Stephen A.?
I'm all right.
Big fan of yours here in Texas.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
All right. I just had a couple of issues very quick, just to highlight on that you talked about. I'm a veteran. Been to 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, 11 years in the U.S. Navy, and I know exactly what Colin Kaepernick set out to do when he did this. But it's kind of like back in the day, I don't know if you kind of remember some of the old Martin Lawrence shows. If he wore a certain type of Jordans, everybody probably had to have those coming up. Well, I think that's what happened with the NFL players you were talking about. A lot of them got word that this is not sending our message across the right way.
Okay.
Kneeling, that may not be the right way. So a lot of them stopped. Colin Kaepernick continued, which is fine. Definitely understood. I think he needs to find a better way besides kneeling if he was in the NFL, and that goes for the other players.
So basically, you're talking about it's not about being listened to, it's about being heard. And the bottom line is that if people ain't getting or grasping what your original intent was, maybe you need to change it up. That's basically what you're saying.
That's it. That's
okay.
it, and it's about action. I've always heard you highlight, and I'm an African-American male. You won't change? Get smarter. Get some education. Things are going to happen in life. There's just some things you can't stop. If you want to have some power, get educated. And that's my first
What's your second point? Go ahead.
My second point is I'm a diehard Steelers fan, have been all my life. Kind of scared for Le'Veon Bell to come back. Don't know if he's going to actually be a cancer in the locker room, but I'm about like you. Don't tell me about Connor.
That's right.
Connor is not Le'Veon Bell.
There we go.
Do we need him? Yes, we do. But we're doing things the typical Steeler way, and somehow it's got us 6 Super Bowls. So I think it'll work itself out.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the call. Let's go to Jeremy. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A?
I'm all right. Talk to me.
All right, I'll talk to you. First of all, I want to tell you that I really appreciate coming from West Virginia, where I grew up, and different things. I really want to tell you how much I appreciate. I listen to Fox and CNN, both try to get in the middle, and I think you're the loudest voice that makes reason when it comes to some of this stuff. And so with social issues, I think you're a tremendous leader in that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
As far as anything else goes, I think the country's pretty young. People forget how old the other countries are, thousands of years old. They've dealt with all this stuff for a very long time. Coming from West Virginia, where I grew up, I got a 9-year-old, 6-year-old boy. They don't know a racist word to their tongue. Not a single one. I think change is coming. I'm a big Raiders fan, had a kidney transplant, fighting some bone disease. Cleo Mack being gone makes me angry, but if they didn't have the money, they didn't have the money.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. I don't want to hear anything about the Raiders not having the money. You had the money to give John Gruden $100 million. You had the money to give John Gruden $100 million. You got enough money to give Derek Carr $125 million. Could have found the money to give Khalil Mack. That's just me. But I appreciate the call, Jeremy, and I appreciate your perspective, and I thank you for your kind words. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so much. Sean, you're live at Stephen A. Talk to me, Sean.
Stephen A., first want to just say what a privilege and an honor it is to speak to you in the world of sports. In my opinion, you are the most respected voice out there.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that you can bring some clarity to this situation to me.
Okay.
For me. You were very animated earlier when speaking about Colin Kaepernick. Let me just first of all say that I'm not one of those people that's ignorant to the situation. I understand why Kaepernick's doing what he's doing. I don't believe it's about the flag. I know that he's actually donated money. He's been very active with social issues. I understand all of that. You are outraged that he's not getting paid, that Nike's getting paid. These people are making money. He's still blackballed. And all I've heard is outrage regarding Colin Kaepernick and how he has the right to do what he's doing. So my question for you is, why aren't more people talking about the rights of the NFL owners and the NFL being a business, and that if they want to just let this guy go, That's their right. Like, I don't understand the outrage in that. It's a job.
Let me explain to you, Sean. I appreciate the question. Let me try and give you an explanation. I got a buddy that calls into the show all the time. His name is Carlton. And he always laments the fact that Colin Kaepernick, the pigs on the socks, the Fidel Castro T-shirt, to comparing Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, and Ray Lewis to the characters in Django, and all of that other stuff as contributing to Colin Kaepernick's demise. And he feels exactly basically the way you expressed yourself just now. And all of those are valid points. Here's where I think that the NFL owners lose their cachet. Have you seen the NBA players taking a knee, Sean?
No, I have not.
Have you seen Major League Baseball players taking a knee?
No, I have not.
Okay. Have you seen hockey players taking a knee?
I have not.
They haven't. You know why? Because it's a part of their contracts to stand for the national anthem. So what happened is that all of them were engaging in what now late Senator John McCain out of Arizona, God rest his soul, once called paid patriotism, where you had the Department of Justice paying these leagues money to essentially promote and market the red, white, and blue, the military, support for the flag, et cetera, et cetera. Those other leagues that I mentioned had it as a part of their contract. So if a player were to take a knee and emulate Colin Kaepernick in any way, they would have been in violation of the policies that they had contractually agreed to adhere to. Do you understand what I'm saying, Sean?
Yeah, so you're saying
the National Football League never had that. They strongly encouraged, but never mandated, which means that Colin Kaepernick was never in violation of anything. So if you are a league owner and you have these contracts that you've doled out to players and it never stipulated that that was mandatory, why are you now punishing him for something that was a non-violation? He didn't violate anything. Not only did he exercise his privileges as an American citizen, okay, but he also was in no violation to the National Football League because they didn't mandate that he do that. So if anybody dropped the ball with all of this, it was the National Football League by not making sure to have it instituted into and implemented into its bylaws, thereby ensuring that it would have been a violation had he elected to kneel anyway. That's why they don't have a leg to stand on. Because the other leagues did something that the NFL was negligent. They've been so busy making money and being successful and propping themselves up as the number one league in America, which they are because they've successfully monetized their sport as an event. But they forgot to enforce it contractually while every other league did so, Sean. And that is why people jump off the rails in defense of Colin Kaepernick, not just because of his right as an American citizen, but also because he did not violate NFL rules. It was their fault for not mandating it. Do you understand?
Can I leave you with just one thing?
Sure.
My one thing and as you're talking, I thank you, first of all, because you shed an immense amount of light on my confusion. What I want to ask is not what you're explaining the same thing that, say, for example, like a Terrell Owens, who people don't want him in a locker room based off of his bad attitude. And so therefore, in essence, he's blackballed, kind of from the league because nobody wants to play with him. Is that not the same thing?
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing because what you're talking about is somebody, and I think that Terrell Owens has gotten an unfair rap in some respects. But even if you would disagree with that and you deduce otherwise, you have to remember that what was really the perceived problem with him is that he's not a good addition to a locker room. It would have a negative effect. Colin Kaepernick wasn't affecting players like that. He affected league owners. He affected patrons who looked at it and allowed the narrative to be hijacked and turned into something that it really wasn't about. But he did not have a negative impact on that locker room like any player who's perceived as being cancerous. Those are two different things, Sean. I got to run. But we could call back tomorrow if you want to. I appreciate the call. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Your calls to close out the show in a minute with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it! Back to the phones we go before we get on out of here. The Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio and simulcast live over the national television airways of ESPN News. Let's get to it. Buck, talk to me. Go ahead.
How you doing, Stephen? This is Buck from Scotch Plains, New Jersey.
Okay.
I think Colin Kaepernick got a raw deal.
Okay.
You know, I really think he got a raw deal, and I don't think it's right for Nike to capitalize on that. You know, because like you said, last 2 years you didn't hear nothing about Kaepernick. Nike didn't have any shirts out, anything out.
Yeah.
Now, you know, they're capitalizing off of this. I don't think it's right. That's
I got
all
you.
I have to say.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Dre. Talk to me, Dre, real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen A., what's happening, man? You my cousin, man. But about Colin Kaepernick, I think that what happens is a lot of times, just like, you know, a smart person like yourself, if you don't have a chance to go back and forth with people, people oftentimes lose your message or don't understand fully. Just like yourself, you get a chance to go back and forth with somebody. So if they don't agree, they can also listen to your point and then somehow come around and kind of see it, or even if they don't see it, see another way to it.
Gotcha.
So because he hasn't had that back and forth, that's the real key to everything that's going on.
Dre, the only thing that I would say to you is not like Colin Kaepernick hasn't had an opportunity, whether it's my show or many, many other platforms. He's been invited to speak on these issues. He's elected not to. That's the only thing I would say to you. As of right now, he can't do it because of the collusion case. But even prior to that, he never spoke on it. But please call back another time when we have more time to get into it, Dre, and I'm happy to put you on. Thanks a lot for calling, buddy, and I appreciate you watching and listening. Let's go to Robert. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Robert, real quick.
Yeah, my thing is earlier when you were talking with Paul Finebaum about the Nick Saban incident that happened, and then the Urban Meyer incident and everything that goes on in sports today, I think we all miss the big picture. The big picture is it's about the money. If that had been someone else that did what Nick Saban did, they'd be gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you've got that much money invested in a coach, he's like he's like your senior on a football team.
Well, I'm going to end it by saying this to you, Robert. I'm going to end this show on your point. Once upon a time, I was told, if you go to a bank and you borrow $3 million and you can't pay it back, you've got a problem. But if you go to a bank and borrow $300 million and you can't pay it back, we've got a problem. The moral of the story is that the more you convince someone to invest in you, the more they must ensure your success. And you know who told me that? Once upon a time, President Donald Trump, when he was a guest on my television show long before he was president. And guess what?